What we're hoping you'll be able to do is engage in a conversation about what we're talking about, what you've heard from Dr. Bunkowski, how that's relative to what you will hear from Dr. Gonzalez and Ms. Ryan as they are talking to us about uh, how important education is. How important is it to make sure you're reaching everybody that walks through the door in that classroom? How to ensure that you're not leaving people behind just because you're trying to go at a certain pace. Underpreparedness is just a fact. It's something that you have to make sure you are ready for no matter what setting you're in. You may not be in a P-12 setting, you may not be in a higher ed setting. It may be that you're teaching adults how to do their job, right? But you can't assume that everybody that walks in that door for you to help them with that skill set will be prepared for what you have to teach them, or that they'll be able to retain it. So how do you reach them? How do you connect with them? And how do you ensure that what you're giving them, they will retain after that setting? So we will start a conversation, but then you will interact with them to ask those questions like Naomi asked earlier about the information that you shared. She was much like your mother, where she started college when her oldest started college, and it's different trying to understand and learn at the pace and at the rate and under the conditions that new learners now are learning, because digital babies have never known a time without technology, right? So those of us who are integrating that, you know, we knew what it was like to have a landline phone, and the only time you could get a call was if you were in that room or in that house to receive that call. Digital babies don't know anything about that. What do you mean it was connected to the wall? How do you, yeah. That's right, that's right. And those big giant bag phones that you take with you with the huge antenna. Like nobody, yes, nobody knows. Payphones, right? Nobody knew about, and nobody carries a dime anymore. You remember Granny wouldn't let you leave the house without a dime, and then it was a quarter, right? The young ones have no clue. Beepers. No, yeah. Beepers and Blackberries. They said, "What's a Blackberry?" Oh my God. So we understand that though, that we have these types of learners in the classroom, right, alongside people who are resistant to technology. Not only do they not know how to use it, they don't want to use it. So how do you make sure that what you're saying and what you're doing as the facilitator of learning is reaching each one of those students in the classroom and effectively connecting with them so that what you are sharing will become a part of them? All right, so I'm moving, and I'm turning it over to you, and you're going to lead us in a conversation about what it means to help underprepared students make sure that they are successful in the classroom.
I really want you to restate some things you said to me, if you don't mind.
That's the setup.
Honestly, it wasn't. I'll tell you the true setup when the mics go off.
Got some tea to spill.
But if you'll start with your experience in higher education after you were released.
Absolutely. So my experience on a traditional, let's back up. So my name is Tia Ryan. Nice to meet you all. I don't know if you guys have the agenda, but I am the founding executive director of thwart. And thwart is an acronym, stands for Forcing Out Recidivism Through Education. And it's transitional housing for formerly incarcerated college students in New Jersey. So I hail all the way from the East Coast, where I thought I left the rain behind, and then I woke as a first-generation college student on the Rutgers University Newark campus. And I am a formerly incarcerated college student. Well, I was a formerly incarcerated college student. Now I'm just a formerly incarcerated woman. Right? That part never goes away. So when I did start my academic career during my incarceration, initially I didn't because I didn't have access to it, but once I did have access to it, it actually made me want to behave because I didn't want to miss class. I used to misbehave and go to solitary confinement because I just was that bored. You know, they used to teach us parenting classes, and I don't have kids. They used to offer AA classes, and I've never had a drug or alcohol problem. So I was kind of stuck in a lull of anger and being impressionable because I was a teenager when I got incarcerated. And I always say this, but in honor of transparency, I did serve 10 and a half years in prison. So when I was finally released in my late 20s, I initially went to the hospitality field. I became a manager of a restaurant in 4 months after my release. Super excited because someone trusted me with their security codes and their money and their employees, which is an honor because not everyone that's formerly incarcerated, you know, I often hear, like, all I know is what I see on TV, right? And I don't know if you guys understood why I went around the room and I shook every single person's hand that was here before we started. I did that for a reason, because I want you guys to see the human side of what's not portrayed on TV, right? I wanted you to see Tia before I came up here and told you my past. I wanted you to feel my energy when I shook your hand. And that's the reason I said, how are you? My name is Tia. And I know that he's not a real police officer in this room right now. He's a real police officer, but he's off duty, he's just here to learn, you know. So I know that. I know Al was just here. He went to go get his grandkids. Yeah. So I know, how did I know these things? I don't know you guys. I know that I love those two names that they have because she gave her name. Yeah, but I know those things, and I wanted you guys to feel my energy, and that's why I went around. I wanted you to see my smile. I wanted you to know the other side of what you see on TV. So now I went and I said, this is a great job, this is a great career, but then I realized I had arthritis in both my ankles and it wasn't gonna work anymore. So I had to switch lanes, and I decided to go back to college. And I was encouraged through the program that actually offered me higher education while I was incarcerated. They encouraged me and said, you should continue that. You already incurred 33 credits. Why don't you come back to this campus and continue your higher education? And I was like, okay, sure. So my first semester, my very, very first semester, we were tasked with a project. It was a group project where we had to build a housing model. And it was a competition between 2 campuses to see who could build the best housing model. Hands down, of course, we were the best. But, you know, it was still a competition. So, and then I realized, you know, myself and my peers that were formerly incarcerated and were working diligently to achieve, you know, our academic degrees, we all had that common thread that it was really difficult to focus on your degree when you couldn't find housing. I know this powerhouse that I love her to death. She spent days, because education was just that important to her, in her car. She didn't have a place to stay. And, you know, I didn't know this until after she had a place, and she was like, yeah, I used to do this. And I'm like, so randomly, like, that's not normal. But how many people can say that? How many of you can say that you would say, like, you could sit there and say, it doesn't matter if I'm homeless, I'm still going to go to school. How many can say that that's still going to be the #1 priority in your life when you have no idea where your next meal is coming from? But I know a lot of people that did that. And I wanted to alleviate that. I didn't want to overlook anybody's grit or ambition or drive. So how do we do that? Let's get a house. Like, it just seemed so big, but to me it was so small. I'm gonna get a house. I approached everyone that did the group project in honor of integrity. I didn't want to just steal an idea. And I said, following semester, because of health reasons, I dropped out of, well, I didn't drop out, I temporarily took off a semester. I stopped out. I paused out for a semester, and I was networking, and I always say I was going to meetings I wasn't invited to, and it was just like I wanted people to get used to seeing me, right? I wanted people to get used to my energy. I wanted people to hear what I wanted to do, hear my dream. This is my dream. And people would just look at me and they would listen to me, but it was just like, okay, she's just gonna make a house. And I didn't know how, fast forwarding, I didn't know how difficult getting a house was. You have to have the same job for 2 years, you have to have good credit, you can't even switch your job in the middle of the process. If I don't like my boss, I can't quit. You're hell, fair warning to anybody who wants to buy a house, no sudden movements. It's very intense. It's very much stressful. It's really stressful. It's almost as if I'm still in community supervision, to be honest, which is, I'm talking about parole. I think I got more slack on parole than I did in the mortgage progress. It was intense. It's a very intense process. But so I did take a break. As I told you, I took a break because my GPA dropped from a 3.8 to a 2.4 because I was so focused on the nonprofit. And I had an investor who said I'd invest $500,000. And I had to walk away from that because, again, education was my top priority.
I just want to point out really very quickly some overlap we've seen and we've heard, whether here or someplace else. Number one, she finally got access to education, which played a super huge role
That's the mustard seed.
in your ability to process where you were going and what you desired to do once you did get out. And then stay true to that. Listen to advisors. Note there were advisors as well. People there to provide some guidance for where she desired to go, and then having access again to higher education. And what you just said, building learner-centered environments for students to learn. Well, how would you ever have come to that place where you said, no, this is now it? It wasn't hospitality, this is it right here. Has she not been given the opportunity to engage in a learning process that really was a part of her world, not necessarily the instructor's world, but the world both for her and her classmates? I just think that's amazing. Any comments?
Okay.
Please do continue, ma'am.
Thank you.
Tell us about the organization that provided the guidance for you once you were released, the organization that said, hey, why don't you continue in this thing?
Absolutely. So that organization is called NJStep, and that's New Jersey, it's such a long name, New Jersey Scholarship and Transformative Education in Prisons. So what NJStep is, they, similar to PromiseNet, they create a pipeline from prison to a higher education institution. NJStep has partnered with, I'm gonna say 4 or 5 higher education institutions to have professors come inside the prisons and teach us. And then they meet with students about 6 months prior to the release and say, hey, do you plan on continuing your education? And they encourage you. We're gonna give you support on campus if you do that. Because what people always have to kind of keep in mind is when we're being released to more than one community. An academic community is a community in itself, as well as your traditional home community, right? And again, if we're struggling with housing, what does that look like? It could be a shelter, it could be a program, but it's that academic community that I want to focus on. The people that guided us were very traditional learning environment, right? So they didn't expect us to understand how to navigate a computer. I personally did not know how to attach an email, like a file to an email. I was freaking out. I'm like, I don't know how to get this to this. They said to send them this, and when I was supposed to copy and paste it, and they were like, no, you just click that little paper clip and bam, you know? But that's something, you can't assume anything. You know, I love what you said about shaping an academic experience around the individual, and that's what NJStep does. They created wraparound services that were specific to each person. In our specific setting, there was a designated office, and we had a director of the program, we had a counselor / social worker who was formerly incarcerated, so she kind of understood both sides of the coin. That was very helpful because, you know, people say there's no such thing as a stupid question, but people don't stand true to that. You can ask them something and they're like, what? If I asked how do I send this email, people would have looked at me like, okay, that's a stupid question, right? But in this environment, I was safe and it was no stupid questions. I used to, the first day I went to class and they said, you're not gonna turn anything in hard copy. Everything's on Blackboard. And I swear, and I'm very honest, I almost beat on myself. I was like, I'm gonna fail, I can't turn anything in. And I was able to go to the NJStep office and say, I'm gonna fail because I don't know what Blackboard is. Can we start with defining it before, how do I navigate it? And they said, okay. And never once, there's always an influx of students that come in each semester that have the same exact questions. I've never gotten the vibe or heard them ever get tired of answering those questions over and over again. That's important on any campus for any non-traditional student.
Let me ask you, in a community like ours and in several different communities around the world, how do you see support for formerly incarcerated individuals panning out? What does that look like at Texas A&M University? What does that look like at the University of Texas in whatever city they're in? What does it look like? Is it a separate program? Is it something that's integrated?
So it would be easy for me to say create a separate program because I enjoy that environment. Specifically because I may not feel comfortable going to the library. I don't know, they had a separate computer in there. So if I had a question on how to navigate the computer, it was in a safe setting. So it's easy for me to say, put aside a little room. Actually told Sam Fernay that. I was like, my highest recommendation is get a little room, even if it's 2 people can fit in there, put a computer and a counselor and you're good, right? Excuse me. So I just say all that to say that it's something, I'm gonna say symbolic, about walking into a room where you can close a door and it's almost like I've closed out any insecurities and doubt that I had. It's almost just like it's symbolic when you walk into a classroom and you're like, okay, I'm ready here to learn, right? I'm here to learn. I'm here to get my education and not be given to me. I own it. It's something symbolic about that. So before any recommendation, I would always recommend have a space, a room where this population can go to. And that's also because sometimes the population has to make, they don't tell you all this, they have to make check-in calls. So it's easier to make a check-in call when you have a central place where you can make the call from. Because if you make it from anywhere on campus, the number might not be the same as what's on the paper. And a check-in call is if someone is in community supervision or in a program, they have to make a call maybe 2 or 3 times when they're away from that specific facility to say, hey, yes, I'm still on Texas A&M Central Texas University campus. You know, they have to do that. Or they might say, okay, let me talk to someone to verify that. So it's easier to navigate those external forces if there is a specific room. But needless to say, you may not have the resources on specific campuses. So you don't necessarily have to have that room, but I would highly recommend if you have specific services in each department. So I was explaining to you, if there's a financial department, which is always is, so in the financial department, we're not saying that everyone has to be well-versed, but there should be at least one person who's well-versed on the financial circumstances or burdens or hurdles of that specific population. So that a student knows if we go to San Fernando, it's like, hey, I have this problem. It's like, don't worry, calm down, I'll call Miss Jones. You know, same thing in the social worker counseling department. You know, there's that go-to person that's very familiar. So I don't know if there's like a workshop or how would you, frame, getting these specific go-to people prepared for that. But if you don't have a specific central location, I would highly recommend at least one person in that department is very well versed in the needs of that population.
Perhaps that's another endeavor for you, coming up with a training series.
There you go.
I would be honored. I literally would be honored to work with 2 PhDs. I can't even fathom. I can't fathom.
If I could interject, it's almost like what you're suggesting is like an ally program that would be on campus, and at least you'd have a list. I know this person will see me and be receptive
Yes.
to working with me, and I can feel safe going and talking.
It's so easy to walk away from something when you don't understand it. It's easy to fear something when you don't understand it. Again, the reason why I walked around and I shook everyone's hand, I don't want anyone to be fearful like, oh, she's probably incarcerated. It's easy to fear something you don't understand. And, how easy would it be to walk away knowing that I was able to get a job in the hospitality field. So how easy is it for me to get discouraged and be fearful of a system that I don't understand and say, I'll just go get a job. But having that community support, faculty and staff, even non-traditional, believe it or not, no one's saying give up your career and this is your criminal justice field you must refer to. I've had professors, like you said, with the note cards, and I went to her and it was like, on the note card, tell me something about yourself. And I literally, for the life of me, still don't know why I did it to this day, but I put down I'm formerly incarcerated. Like, it was just on my heart, I guess, to just put it on there. And that was my biggest cheerleader. She's not a part of the NJStep program, but she is a part of the academic fabric. You don't have to have a specific title to lend a hand or give some support. She's literally my biggest cheerleader. I email her and I say, hey, you have time for your traditional students, your current students for office hours. I know I'm a former student, but I need some office hours to this day, and it doesn't take much, but yeah.
Would you recommend then sensitivity training for all members of an educational institution?
I mean,
diversity trainings and that sort of thing, but would it be beneficial to have a kind of training that says, hey, look, these are our students, and we're going to need to know how to deal with them, how to communicate with them, and that sort of thing. What?
I do think that's never gonna not be beneficial, right? I'm not gonna say no. I do think that,
I'm sorry, I hear the laughter.
it's not gonna not be beneficial, right?
Right.
But honestly, the way I look at things is, you need to practice sensitivity training in your everyday life. There's no such thing as I have to take time out of my life to learn how to be nice to another person, in my opinion. I don't have the 2 PhDs though, so I don't know, but in my opinion, it's like, treat people how you want to be treated. And I hear people often come up to me and it's like, oh my God, you're just so nice, or I don't feel any tension or anxiety. I know I'm fully incarcerated, but why do I have to wear that? I'm more than that. And I could simply, easily be walking around with this chip on my shoulder, but I don't see the world as black and white. So whether someone is formerly incarcerated, whether they suffer from blindness or deafness, or they're overweight or underweight, or they're black or white or orange or blue or whatever it is, that's something that we have to know how to do as human nature every day. I don't think there should be a specific training set aside. Now, as I do think there should be a training on what needs to be conveyed to that population. But as far as sensitivity, no. But as far as what could be conveyed, like what not to expect. You should not expect that this person knows how to send an email. You should not expect that that little lock next to HTTPS, that they know that that's a secure website. It's those little things that you should not underestimate. I think that's the core of the training. But if you shouldn't be working with people if you don't know how to be sensitive.
Well, perhaps that's another training
I'll teach
series.
the training. Let me teach the training. I will
That
stick
is
it to them.
that is such a wonderful and utopic kind of idea, but.
You know what I recommend for a training? Everyone should try waitressing, because when people wake up and they don't have their coffee, that's when you learn how to be patient and sensitive.
Our faculty, anybody who teaches, sometimes you run into the most non-collegial people are college professors, and it's just in the fabric of being an academician almost.
Yeah.
It's like you almost have to remind faculty that not everybody, like Dr. Bunkowski was telling us, learning came very easy for her. She's actually a Mensa, and she won't tell people that because usually they look at her and go, "What? What's your IQ?" But that sense of, because it came easy for me, it's almost a hazing that occurs in the way that they transfer that information to others, and they forget to be collegial to each
Well,
other.
wouldn't that be across every student? I don't think it should, I don't think it's more so a line of for formerly incarcerated students. Wouldn't you need to have that kind of extra sensitivity across lines?
So definitely, you would definitely need to have it across the board. But sometimes, in people's knowing,
Yeah.
because sometimes there is a knowing, and that tends to blind.
Yeah, I think that's a key point, is this blind spot. Like I said, until I met that adjunct professor that had been formerly incarcerated and how important that was to him in teaching incarcerated learners, it's like it had never even occurred to me that some of my fellow faculty members might be, and how effective that might be in teaching. So it's like, you don't know what you don't know, and it is helpful, like having you here speaking. I just kept thinking, it'd be really helpful if we had a panel of students talking about what they needed. Because it's really helpful to have, like when we talk about access and inclusion, to have students with various disabilities talk about what they needed or what they found helpful. Anytime we hear from students about what they need, regardless of where they are and what they need, it's helpful to hear from students and former students. So whatever we can learn.
Honestly, to be transparent, when you were up here speaking and you said that, at a point in your life, you assumed that people couldn't catch on or learn as quickly as you just because they were lazy, or,
Didn't try.
I thought the same thing. I'm gonna be honest. I did. I used to get straight A's when I was younger, and I had such a difficult childhood, and I grew up in a very affluent neighborhood, and I just assumed that I got kind of caught up in the fabric of what people define as a low-income community or a displaced community, and it was, they don't want to, they just want to stand on a corner and sag their pants, and I was like, okay, that's what it is. And then I went to a more diverse neighborhood, and I remember one of the students said, and it will always stick with me, she says, "Man, I might as well just leave. They don't teach us anything." And I was like, wait, she is asking to learn. Why have people been lying to me all these years and saying it's like a culturalist thing and that students don't want to learn? It's literally that access. They were teaching things to them that I had learned in like 4th grade, and I was a senior. And I was, bored, so I wanted to cut school. So I was like, I'm gonna fall asleep. I know this already. But it's literally, they didn't have that access to certain resources. So when you said it, I literally completely related from a different standpoint, but I completely related to what you said.
sensitivity training, which believe me is probably needed.
Yeah.
It is needed.
I can teach you sensitivity. I can coach.
That would be awesome. I think what happens, yes, sir, go ahead.
I'm in the public school system, and one of the things I always find, and you hear it from teachers all the time, with the top administration, it's almost like, you know what, we don't care what you guys say. So what happens along that line? Because in order to become a principal, you have to be a teacher for at least 3 years. And once these guys become Dr. So-and-so, it's almost like, for the teachers, it's like, hey man, you're doing exactly what I tell you to do, and so we gotta do exactly what they tell us to do, and then the kids miss out because we understand the kids a lot better than what Dr. So-and-so understands, because we with the kids every day. So, and I get what you're saying, because a lot of our students are like, man, you're not teaching us nothing. But I can't really teach you anything, because you know what? These guys over here said, right, you're supposed to be right here at this particular time. And so how do we address that from the level of what the teachers would call, the administrators, you went over to the dark side, because now all of a sudden,
I think you came to the right place, because college promise, right?
Right.
Think about college promise.
Yes.
College promise is literally designed from P to 12, literally to K to 12, to make sure that students are prepared. First of all, thinking about it. In my household, no one ever said, let's save for college and strive for college. No one talked bad about it, but it literally never crossed my mind to go to college, because no one before me had gone to college. So I'm a first generation college student. Literally, I had to go to prison to think it was a great thing just to come out and get a degree, which is crazy, but that's my reality. So college promises let students even put it in their mind. That's for one, the thought, that mustard seed that grows, that creates that urgency to even want to get it done. But then it also asks, what do you need to be prepared for that, to even get you to that step? What resources, whether you're in public school, private school, whatever it is, what do you need from the community, from us, to get you to that next step, to make sure you actually make it there? It's not just formerly incarcerated populations or currently incarcerated populations, that's just a component, or even just adults, that's just a component. College promise in itself is literally, it's full circle. Let's get you thinking, what support do you need? And then when you're there, what support do you need there?
But is that being offered by, let's say, Texas A&M to like the leadership in the leadership programs for like your principals and your school superintendents to have that attitude of like, you know what, we need to be more open to understanding what the kids need.
College Promise is more of a partnership. It's a collaboration. It's not an individual institution's thing, if that makes any sense.
Right.
So it's not something Texas A&M does in and of itself, or the University of Texas does in and of itself, or Central Texas College does in and of itself. It is a program designed to reach the masses. So how do we do that? Well, one person can't, but if we are working together towards this common goal of first educating young kids and their caregivers, and I say caregivers because we have parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and next door neighbors. It's reaching them and giving them the hope of education. And hopefully then other people catch the spirit of that. Manor Middle School somebody there, and I'm making that, I know it's a real school, but go with me here. You know, somebody at that school. Somebody there catches it and says, you know what?
Put it on my forehead.
I want
I
in.
can't get rid of that school.
I want in.
That is so wrong.
What you all are doing. And so it's a partnership. It's like Hands Across America, which somebody may not remember.
Right.
But it's like Hands Across America, where we link arm in arm, hand in hand, to reach as far and as wide as we can. Now, you said something earlier that got me thinking, how do we make this thing relevant for other people? How do we get them in on it? How do we get their buy-in? Well, people will or they won't. I believe what we're talking about here and what we will continue to talk about is the demonstration of when it works and when it doesn't. Think back to the research we saw. Hey, you can get moderate success and a lack of recidivism when you give this much to it. And so our argument is not necessarily with individuals about you should be doing this or you should be doing that. Those who will absolutely do. And we see it played out in people not returning to prison. We see it played out in people not going in the first place when all our little statistics said they probably should have. We see it played out in professors who were once incarcerated themselves having such an impact on maybe someone who's headed in the wrong direction that that person just turns around. So I think it's more of a demonstration of what is done rather than a pushing of what people should be doing. Now in higher ed, there's mandatory training. I think we all need that.
Sensitivity.
Yeah, mandatory sensitivity training.
So, you know, I can't talk with my back. So I'm seeing two things. I'm seeing opportunity, you know, and that is opportunity. And a lot of our children, a lot of those who are incarcerated, they just needed someone to give them access to the opportunity. It's that opportunity gap that we want to close. And then I just keep thinking about Maslow. So when you spoke about, you know, the woman is in her car, you know, is she safe? Are her physiological needs being met? And as a teacher, when I'm trying to get my students to self-actualization, where they know who they are, they know where they're going, they know how they're going to get there, I have to go back and check each box. Did they eat this morning? Some of your clients may not have gotten that meal. Are they safe? Are they loved? One of the greatest human needs is to feel valued. And I see that this is something that will help people to feel valued. And then we're going to tap into that self-esteem. You say, I'm not dumb. I'm not asking a dumb question, and people are pouring into you. And now look at where you are. And then you keep, you know, when you were saying I was incarcerated, that's part of your journey.
Yes.
And you said I wasn't gonna even think about college until I, you know, and so we don't look at you as less than. We know that is part of your journey. And it's going to galvanize you to even greater things.
Come on now, say it now. That's Dr. Tia.
Okay, there's an inside joke. So, I'm really not Dr. Tia.
So do this for us. If there were three things you wanted us to walk away with, three things every person in this room could do to affect what it is we see, what would those three things be
What it is you see?
in terms of recidivism, in terms of even the first incarceration? How do we exact against
the first thing, and you mentioned it, that it kind of hurt your, your insides. Ask questions, that was where my life kind of took a turn, whether you're an educator or you're in some type of position of authority. Asking questions is a really big thing, and my life could have been completely different had someone asked, why are you running away? Right? I was running away because I was being sexually abused. So my journey starts, it doesn't start with incarceration. It started because, at the age of 5 to the age of 14, so for 9 years, I was sexually abused. And I used to run away from home, and not a police officer, no offense, but not a police officer, not an educator, not any adult said why. So, ask those questions that maybe the average person, don't assume that anybody's asked the question already. Ask a question, and I guess maybe that's where that sensitivity comes in too, because ask it in a way that makes people feel comfortable enough to answer it. If you come like, why are you running? What's wrong with you? See, now I'm turned off because now nothing's wrong with me.
Yeah.
Let's get that straight.
Yeah.
I'm hurt, I'm confused, I'm embarrassed. Nothing's wrong with me. What's wrong with you? Okay, so you're right, it's sensitivity. We'll go back to that. Go back to that. Ask it in a way, that makes me comfortable. So questions, no matter what setting, no matter what stage, questions are always going to be my number one. Being open, being open to any possibility, right? When you said that you were kind of shocked that someone formerly incarcerated, not shocked, but for lack of a better word, because I can't remember the word you used, was an educator. Being open to any possibility, because I used to intern for a congressman, which no one thought that I could work in a governmental building, but I did. Being open to possibilities for any population. And again, we're going to go across those lines, whether you're formerly incarcerated, whether you're low income, being open to possibilities. The third thing, let's see. I think partnerships is a great thing. I'm really big on partnerships. Don't be afraid to cross lines. That's a really big thing that I kind of focus on in my day-to-day. I know as a person that's formerly incarcerated, I'm not gonna lie, you see countless police officers and correctional officers in the community, and I hear my peers like, I hate them, and I'm like, but why? Why? I want to partner with them because maybe you went through something that I can relate to, or vice versa. How can we come together as a community? Those non-traditional relationships, those non-traditional partnerships, how can we create a synergy that we can collectively as a community? Because when it comes to community, that's a collective. It's not, that's only your block as a police officer, this is police officer's block. This is not only the blocks for African Americans, this is not only the blocks for elderly. It's a community and it's a melting pot, and we need to figure out how we're all collectively going to enhance this community. Because it doesn't say this block is going to get $5,000. I'm talking about literally in a 6-month radius. You're going to get $5,000 allocated to your school. You're going to get $3,000 allocated to your school, but you all go to the same school. It's not like that. It's the same exact community, and we're going to leave out the gerrymandering part, but it's the same exact community. So just picture the same community. So you need to create some collective partnership and synergy, whether you're in an academic community, whether you're in a community, former incarcerated community, whatever that community is. Partnerships and synergy and collaborations are a really, really, really big thing of mine. I love those non-traditional relationships.
Okay, so we have it. What's the first thing?
They forgot.
Being open to possibilities.
Questions.
Ask questions.
Questions.
Ask questions.
Number 2.
So let me ask. We're in a higher education setting, or no, perhaps we simply are where we are, whether that's in higher education, in compulsory education, in our communities. What do you ask? What are some questions you ask? Set up the scenario in your own mind. What are you asking?
Personally,
Yeah.
I would ask for mentorship, because the position that I'm in, I would seek to be more knowledgeable in the direction that I want to go into. So I would ask for mentorship.
That's great. I had not thought about that direction, but that goes
I
to
like
your
that.
point. If we aren't asking questions, then we aren't getting answers to the real problems we have as individuals or as organizations. So thank you so much for asking that question.
So I know I'm here to speak, but earlier, and I'm giving a perfect example, that's why I asked this first. I posed a question to the audience. I know I'm here to speak, but I said I want to ask you a question. What do you need from the higher education institution to be successful, or what do you feel like you need to be successful when dealing with a formerly or currently incarcerated population? It's not about me coming up here like, I know this and this is what I need, because I'm one person do you know the prison population is really big? But in case that's the biggest number I can say, it's really big. But I'm here to represent and definitely be a voice for them, but I'm not all of them. So, I can't say this is what I need and that's what everyone needs. So I need, it's important for me to ask you guys too, what do you need to make that more, that transition easy, that pipeline feasible for you guys? No one's saying that you don't want to help, but what do you need to do that? And the fact that you said mentorship, that's awesome.
Really good.
So one of the things that Tia inspired in that conversation this afternoon, I got an email before I could get back to my office from one of the staff members who attended the Chautauqua this afternoon, who asked me, she said, I don't know what I can do individually, but maybe I can teach them Canvas. We use Canvas instead of Blackboard. She works as one of our instructional designers in Canvas, right? So she's offering her skill set to anybody who needs it. She says maybe that could be something that I offer to students who are just becoming acclimated to our environment, because she mentioned that you didn't know how to use Blackboard. You didn't know how to turn in an assignment on Blackboard. She said, well, maybe I can teach them how to use Canvas.
That's
But
perfect.
the willingness
Yeah.
to offer whatever skill set she had to help support that environment, creating this inclusive environment that says, I'm available to you for whatever it is that you need. You may not even know what your needs are yet, right? But I'm available once you start to discover what that is.
That's my favorite excuse I use. I'll give you a secret. When people say, well, I didn't know to ask that. You guys can steal it if you want. Just say, I didn't know I was supposed to ask that. How am I supposed to don't even ask? My favorite fault.
You said it earlier, you don't know what you don't know. Okay, so second. What was the second takeaway?
Stu?
Bill?
She did.
You gotta be open to possibility.
Okay, like what? Give us an example. What would that look like under this umbrella?
Yeah, I ain't been in college since 22. You know what I mean? I'm 50. Anyway.
You were open to a possibility yesterday.
Yep.
Talk about it.
A very good possibility. So open-mindedness. Just being able to hear, learn, grow through other people's experiences. Like I told Tia, I was just proud of her from hearing her testimony, even so having first met her yesterday. Wow, because she's been through something I never even experienced that. Meeting someone who's been incarcerated but still yet has accomplished all
that she has accomplished thus far since being released. That really kind of inspired me to try and help other people who might be having those obstacles as far as getting their learning, as Dr. Lisa said today, to claim their learning. So that's inspiring me. Now, the way it does inspire me is to get information out on the platform that God has given me, which is the radio. So as it relates to that, I'm looking for my friends here at Texas A&M Central Texas campus to let me know when y'all got ideas, functions, forums, events, whatever it is, let me know so we can put that out and I can grow with you. I can attend these kind of events and grow with you as well. Because I give up my opportunity to go get a 2-piece and a biscuit to be here.
Because he knows they're open until midnight. Okay, thank you so much. What about the third? The third. Somebody yelled it out the first time.
Be willing to cross lines.
Okay, by doing what?
Learning other
Forming.
Partnerships.
Yes, absolutely, by forming partnerships. And I think those three things go in tandem.
They do.
Because for every comment anyone has made, starting from number 1, there was a little, if you listen, there was a little crossover from that point to the next point. And so I think what this does for us, hopefully what it does for us, this conversation and these nuggets you have left us with, is fresh, open eyes.
Good.
And I mean like fresh, comma, not freshly open, but fresh, open eyes.
I like that. I like
where
the
we-
comma.
Yeah.
I like that.
So where we're seeing things anew, where we are consciously behaving, that is, with one another, interacting with our students. It's just fresh and it's new, and I'm hopeful that College Promise and what you're doing at the Fort House and the research you're doing will bring us to a place where we're not looking, we're in 10 years or even 20 years, we're saying, and we still are here?
Yeah.
I'm hoping that we'll do it. Any final comments for us?
I'm gonna say it, Dr. Porter, and say it, Frenna. I'm gonna say it. I wanna go line dancing. I'm gonna say it.
That's a Texas tradition. You can't leave unless you do that.
You know a place?
I mean, hey, it's pretty
You know a place. That's what I wanna listen. It's like an experience. I don't go to the movies without getting popcorn. I know it's overpriced and I can pop it in the microwave, but it's the perfect experience. And it's my first time in Texas. So,
There is a class, but I'm afraid it's already closed. It's at
Okay,
the
so the
community
good thing
center.
is-
It's clean for when you come back.
I just took the words. I was about to say the good thing is I have a reason to come back. I mean, I have another reason. I definitely want to, bring Fort House here, and I want to continue to work with College Promise and definitely Texas A&M Central Texas. But I also will go line dancing.
If you get Sam Renee out there line dancing, please take a picture.
A video. Guys, please show Miss Tia Ryan some
Yeah.
love. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Dr. Gonzalez,
Yes,
everyone.
indeed.
Thank you all so much for being here. Class is dismissed. Thank you for your time and your evening, for sharing with us. We hope you'll be with us tomorrow, same time, 5:30 to 8. And we will engage with the community tomorrow. We'll have the Assistant Chief of Police, AC Young, will be here, along with 2 educators from Central Texas College, our coordinator from here, who coordinates all of our faculty, who teaches at Gatesville as well, and our College Promise board members will be here as well. So meet us at 5:30 tomorrow. Thank you.